A couple of weeks ago, as I prepared a script for an entirely different video, I discovered that a story I've been wanting to tell on this channel, long before I even started it, was about to become a film to be released in January. Not wanting to waste an opportunity, I realised I had to move this project forwards. But that hopefully means my next videos should come a bit faster. If you do enjoy this video, please like and subscribe and let me know of other amazing and strange stories you'd like to see me tell. Now, without further ado, if I was to say British spy, you'd probably start thinking of these actors: vodka martinis, Aston Martins and beautiful women. You're probably not thinking about the corpse of a homeless man being sent to disguise an invasion. Yet in 1943, that was exactly the spy we needed. The unwitting hero of our story is Glindal Michael. Born in 1909 in Aberbargo, Wales, he didn't have an easy life. His father was a coal miner who killed himself when Glindal was just 15. He and his mother then survived by way of charity until she passed in 1914 when he was 31. Homeless, destitute and with no friends or family to help him, Glindal drifted until he ended up in London. Scraping by on the streets, he died aged 34 in a disused warehouse, having ingested rat poison smeared on bread crusts. His country may have failed him, but he would have had no idea just how important he was about to become. Successes in the North Africa campaign in late 1942 meant the Allied forces there would soon be free to launch attacks into Europe from the south. Planners chose two possible targets: Sicily, to open shipping lanes for the Allies in the Med, or the Balkans to try and trap German forces between British, American and Soviet forces. In January of 1943, the decision was made. The target was Sicily, but there was one major problem. As Churchill said, everyone but a bloody fool would know it was Sicily. Indeed, the island was heavily defended and would only become more so as an invasion force was assembled. The Allies needed to divert their attention. They needed to convince Hitler the invasion would take place in Greece. To achieve this, the Allies launched Operation Barclay, a fake army set up their headquarters in Cairo, Egypt, which operated significant amount of radio traffic in order to appear real. Dummy tanks and armoured vehicles were placed in Syria to create the image of an assembling invasion force. Greek interpreters were recruited, and Greek maps were acquisitioned. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at the plan. And then, well, MI5 threw the kitchen sink. 20 Committee, the section in charge of double agents, was so called because 20 in Roman numerals is a double cross. A member of this committee, Flight Lieutenant Charles Chumley, and that's Chumley spelt CHOLMONDELEY, outlined a plan as outrageous as the spelling of his name: to drop a corpse carrying fake documents where the enemy could discover it, in the hopes that they would mistake the information as real. Amusingly, this idea was originally proposed in something called the Trout Memo, circulated by Admiral John Godfrey, but believed to have been written by Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond himself, who worked as the personal assistant to Godfrey. The memo included 54 ways in which the enemy might be fooled or lured in. The 28th was titled A Suggestion, not a very nice one, and formed the basis for Chumley's plan. 20 Committee initially rejected the plan, but decided to assign Naval Officer Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague to help Chumley develop it further. The invasion of Sicily was planned for July of 1943, so if the body was going to be found before then, and the Germans were going to act on their misinformation, then they'd need to move quickly. To get the plan rolling, Montague and Chumley needed to find a body. There was obviously no shortage due to the war, but they needed one with the right sort of death, something that could match up with an air crash and dying in the ocean. It would also need to be one that wouldn't be claimed by any family for burial. Montague discussed the need with London coroner Bentley Purchase, who agreed to look out for a suitable corpse. And that's where Glindal Michael returns to our story. On the 28th of January, Purchase notified Montague and Chumley that he had a suitable body, and that the poison Glindal had consumed would likely not be noticed in a body that had been in the sea for several days. They now had a body, but even in the mortuary refrigerator, they only had 3 months before the body would decompose too much to be of use. Now part of the larger deception plan for the invasion of Sicily, the team chose the name of their mission: Operation Mincemeat. And I think someone there had a dark sense of humour. They would hide the documents on Glindal's body and float him somewhere near Spain, knowing that the nominally neutral Spanish government had sympathies to Germany and had previously cooperated with the German intelligence service, the Abwehr. But the body of a homeless person wouldn't be very useful for convincing the Germans. I mean, why would such a person be carrying secret documents? No, Glindal would have to become someone else, someone who wouldn't arouse suspicions. So Chumley and Montagu set about crafting a new history for Glindal, and there's a sort of sad irony that in death he was given a far grander life than he was ever actually afforded. Glindal became Acting Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. Martin was assigned to Combined Operations Headquarters, and every part about him was carefully considered. He was a Royal Marine because the uniforms were easily available and came in several standardised sizes. As a Marine, he'd also come under Admiralty authority, so messages about his death would be routed through the Naval Intelligence Division, meaning MI5 would be able to hear about it quickly. Finally, his rank made him important enough to carry secret documents, but not so important that any German official would expect to have heard of him. They took this approach to his personal life as well, creating a whole new persona, including a fictitious family and fiancé. And to make it all seem as real as possible, and to reinforce this fake identity in the minds of whoever examined the body, they had to choose select items to be placed on his body. Apparently in spy circles, this is known as pocket litter. Among this pocket litter was a photo of the fake fiancée named Pam, with the photo itself being provided by one of the MI5 clerks, Jean Leslie. 2 love letters written by Pam were also included, alongside a receipt for a diamond engagement ring. There were letters from William's father and his family solicitor, and also a message from Lloyd's Bank demanding payment of an overdraft, a whopping £79 and 19 shillings, which is about £4,000 today. There were 2 points of difficulty that arose when preparing William. The first was picked up when producing his naval identity card. When they took pictures of Glindal's corpse, it was rather obvious that he was dead. Thankfully, an MI5 officer, Captain Ronnie Reed, looked quite a bit like Glindal, and he agreed to have his photo taken in Royal Marine uniform. With the cards completed, Montagu spent several weeks rubbing them on his trousers so they would look suitably worn. The second point of issue is rather amusing to think about. One of the things that was rationed during wartime was underwear, and they couldn't give William Martin any old underwear. It had to match the background they had made for him. But being so difficult to get hold of, there was no one willing to donate theirs for the mission. And so, MI5 started searching around the country for used underwear. And they got lucky. The warden of Oxford New College, Herbert Fisher, a well-renowned historian, had recently been hit by a lorry. And although he had died, some of his possessions were kept at the college, including his underwear, which was high quality enough to be used in the deception. This meant his underpants were confiscated by the British government for use in the war effort. Acting Major William Martin is almost ready for his first and last mission, but they still had to get the documents right. There were several letters and pamphlets put in, but there are 2 main documents that form the core of the deception. The first, a letter from his would-be commanding officer, Vice Admiral Louis Mountbatten, to the commander of the Mediterranean Fleet, Admiral Andrew Cunningham, introducing Major Martin as an amphibious warfare expert on loan until the assault was over. The main document was a rather unofficial personal letter sent by Lieutenant General Archibald Nye and addressed to General Harold Alexander, the commander of an Allied army group in Algeria and Tunisia. It needed to have a few key points, labelling Greece as the main target of the attack, and they wrote draft after draft trying to get the feel of the letter to be just right. Eventually they realised they could just get General Nye himself to write the letter. Folded in this letter was a single black eyelash. The letters were placed in a briefcase, and to ensure it wasn't separated from the body, a leather-covered chain secured it to the belt of Major Martin's trench coat. Approval for the plan to proceed was received from Churchill on the 15th of April, and final confirmation came from General Eisenhower on the 17th. The body of Major Martin was then placed inside a special canister filled with dry ice to preserve it. The canister read, "Handle with care, optical instruments," in order to hide its true purpose. And if the story wasn't strange enough already for you, here's where things start getting really silly. The first step for getting Major Martin into German hands was to head to Scotland for a submarine. To get there, they need a driver, and who better to get there quickly than a champion racing driver employed by MI5. The driver was St John Ratcliffe Stewart Jock Horsfall, which is a bit of a mouthful to say, but brilliant, we've got a champion racing driver to get us up to Scotland nice and quickly, right? Well, there was one issue with St John. He was legally blind. Oh, and he refused to wear any glasses because he liked to look fashionable. Even when racing, he wore a shirt and tie rather than any protective gear. Okay, yeah, we're all set, ready for our drive. Charles Chumley and Ewan Montague climb into the back of a van with our body hidden in a canister, ready to be driven 500 miles by a blind racing driver. I can't imagine that it was a very comfortable journey. And apparently there was at least one roundabout he came to, didn't see, and launched over the top of it. But despite it all, he got them relatively safely to Scotland, to the town of Greenock on the west coast. From there, the canister containing the body was loaded into the submarine HMS Seraph. Only the commander, Lieutenant Norman Beale Jewell, knew the true purpose of the canister, and during the journey, members of the crew would be eating and sleeping right next to it, completely unaware of the dead man that was so close to them. Huelva had been chosen because living in it was a certain Abwehr agent, Adolf Klaus, the son of the German consul, and he was one of Germany's best operatives. He would be sure to gather as much information as he could and send it on to German command. HMS Seraph surfaced shortly after a fishing fleet sailed over them, and the canister was brought onto the deck. All of the crew, except for the officers, were sent below, and the officers retrieved the body from the canister and dropped him over the side and into the water. Seraph was ordered into full astern so that the wash would push the body towards the shore. Lieutenant Jewell had never given a burial at sea before, and so as the body drifted away, he recited a rather apt passage from the Psalms. "I will keep my mouth as if it were with a bridle, held my tongue, and speak nothing. I kept silence." Just 5 hours later, the body of Major Martin was found by a Spanish fisherman, and taken by soldiers to a naval judge. The Spanish government officially notified the British consulate that a body had been found. The British consulate in Spain had already been told of the plan, and the vice-consul, a man named Hazelden, had his own role to play. He immediately informed the British Admiralty and began sending some pre-scripted messages back and forth with his superiors. MI5 already knew these messages were being intercepted by the Germans, and that they had broken the codes. The messages told of how important it was the consulate recover the briefcase, and to really tempt the German operatives, the message, "Ensure the briefcase is kept out of undesirable hands," did the trick. An excellent start, but now came the hard part. If the Spanish did a good job examining the body, they'd almost certainly realise the difference between a body that had been in the water for a few hours and one that had been in a fridge for 3 months. Hazelden was invited to attend the autopsy, and not long after it began, he offered that due to the hot day and the smell from the dead body, that they might like to finish early and go for lunch instead. Thankfully, the Spanish doctors agreed, signed the death certificate to say that Major Martin had drowned, and joined Hazelden for lunch. Major Martin was buried in Huelva with full military honours. He had done his part, but now the plan would continue without him. The Spanish naval authorities kept hold of the briefcase, and Montague and Chumley were now in a frustrating position. The Germans wanted to get hold of their briefcase. MI5 didn't want it back, but rather wanted to help the Germans get their briefcase, and the Spanish weren't letting anyone have the briefcase. Despite the pressures from Adolf Klaus and the Abwehr, on the 5th of May it was instead taken to Madrid, and for a short time MI5 lost track of it. If the Germans didn't get their hands on it, the entire plan could fall apart, and all that effort would be for nothing. But the briefcase came to the attention of the lead German agent in Spain, Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, who asked the head of the Abwehr, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, to personally intervene. Eventually, the Spanish agreed and extracted the documents from their envelopes, giving the German agents just 1 hour to photograph everything. After they had done so, they carefully refolded everything exactly as it was and re-soaked it in salt water so that it would appear that the documents were never opened. They made every effort to put everything back as they had found it, but missed one crucial thing: that single black eyelash placed between the folds of the letter. Kuhlenthal was so convinced by what he had seen and deemed it so important that he personally flew the photographed documents straight to Berlin, where it eventually landed on the desk of Adolf Hitler. On the 11th of May, the briefcase was finally handed to Hazelden at the British consul, and he forwarded it back to London, where the missing eyelash was confirmed. Montague and Chumley now knew their letter had been read. 3 days later, on the 14th of May, a German communication was decrypted at Bletchley Park, and it warned that the invasion was to be in the Balkans and that reinforcements were to be sent to Greece. The Germans had fallen for it. The whole mincemeat team, Montague and Chumley, were ecstatic. A message was sent to Churchill from MI5. It read, "Mincemeat swallowed, rod, line and sinker." Hitler began mobilising the German war machine, moving it away from Sicily and instead towards Greece. By June, 19,000 men, an entire panzer division with hundreds of tanks, torpedo boats and also Luftwaffe aircraft were posted in Greece and prepared for an invasion that would never come. On the 9th of July, 1943, German High Command transmitted a warning of imminent invasion of Greece. The next morning, in the early hours before sunrise, Allied soldiers began landing on the beaches of Sicily, with 3,000 ships putting 160,000 troops ashore over the next 3 days. The Allies had expected the invasion to take 90 days to be successful. It took them just 38. They expected to lose 300 ships. They lost just 12. They expected to lose 10,000 men in the first week of fighting. They lost 1,500. By any measure, it was an incredible success. Sicily finally fell on the 19th of August, 1943, at the cost of 25,000 Allied lives, and the attack led to the end of the fascist government in Italy and the arrest of Mussolini. This puts Operation Mincemeat in the history books as one of the most successful wartime deceptions ever carried out. The full work of Mincemeat was kept secret, though a film in 1956, The Man Who Never Was, gave much of the events away. Of course, spiced up with a bit of fictitious dramatisation, and the more sensitive secrets removed from the story. There was one thing that was never revealed by the film: the true identity of the corpse. Glindal Michael, that homeless man who had died of rat poison, had saved the lives of thousands, but he was not revealed for decades, and the grave in Huelva claimed him as Major William Martin. But in 1997, the government finally gave him his name back, and his grave now reads, Glindal Michael, served as Major William Martin, Royal Marines. If you made it through this far, thank you so much for watching. It's stories like this that make me so fascinated by history in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to be alerted for my next video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.